Hi friends, it's Jen Quintana here, and I am wanting to get on here today because yesterday I heard today that yesterday there was an announcement within the Jehovah's Witness organization that would allow people to get blood transfusions under very specific situations. And that situation is that if they can store their own blood ahead of a surgery, then they could get their own blood transfused back to them, and that it would be up to their conscience if they wanted to do that. Now, this is a really big deal because previously, all blood transfusions were forbidden based on the scripture that said that you needed to pour the blood out and return it to the earth because it belonged to God. And so if the blood came out of your body, it couldn't be stored and put back into your body. Once it came out of your body, it had to be poured out to God, was the interpretation historically. So this is really important development for me. I have a few thoughts on it. One is that my sister was not able to have a life-changing surgery that she needed because of the blood issue. And so she lived her entire life with some severe disabling conditions that led to her early death. And she suffered greatly throughout her life unnecessarily and was in a lot of pain. So I wrote about that on my Substack yesterday a little bit. Coincidentally, I think it was the day before, on the 19th, was the 18th was the anniversary of her death. So I wrote about it on my Substack on the 19th, and then the next day on the 20th, the organization announces that in some limited situations, blood transfusions will be permitted going forward. And so I always say there are no coincidences, and it's very interesting to me that that was top of my mind when I was remembering my sister on the 19th, having just passed the anniversary of her death, and that the very next day, this announcement is made. Now, I heard the announcement on some Facebook groups for former Jehovah's Witnesses, and some of the people in the comments were saying things like, we're all furious that this is happening. And I know that there are a lot of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses that get angry when the organization shifts and changes, and then they kind of, I don't know, it's not that they're denying our experience and what we went through before, but it feels like that a little bit. It feels like I'm not even speaking for myself. Like, I didn't leave the religion because of the blood issue, or any of the other issues. I left for my own reasons, but I think that some people maybe left or got disfellowshipped, and under the new rules they might not have. And so I think those people who are really upset about the changes are maybe ones who were affected by doing something that's now permissible. To me, I think that it's a good change. It's a great move. It's awesome that there's now this freedom to make your own medical choices. I'm a big fan of medical freedom. I wrote about it in my blog around 2021 after the pandemic, when there was a lot of controversy around whether or not people should be able to be forced to get vaccines. And I wrote about my sister's experience and her choice to forego a life-changing surgery. So to me, medical freedom is important. That this very controlling religion that we were all raised in is now allowing people to make their own choices within certain parameters is a step forward in the right direction. Certainly isn't a step all the way forward. There's still some parameters, right? It wouldn't work in an emergency situation, but it does work in a planned surgery situation, it seems. So I don't ever want to say something like I'm upset that they're making the rules more lenient now. They should be making the rules more lenient. They should be respecting people's autonomy. They should be letting us read and discern scripture and make our own choices. They shouldn't be controlling us. And so I think that it helps future generations, and I'm all for the change. So I think it's a great change. And I think we have to be careful as former Jehovah Witnesses not to be unhappy that this is happening, and that there are some easier paths forward for the rest of our friends and loved ones and family members who are still controlled by their religion. So I just wanted to jump on here and talk a little bit about my sister's experience. She had polio as a child when she was 3 years old, and she was paralyzed like all the children were who had polio. This was in the 50s when polio was, there was an epidemic in the United States. And she was placed into a Sister Kinney hospital for polio patients. Sister Kinney was a Catholic nun nurse who had discovered that hot compresses could alleviate some of the symptoms of the polio and return people to mobility. So she lived actually in that Sister Kinney hospital until she went to kindergarten there, she told me. She didn't talk about it often. It was a very terrifying and traumatic experience for her to be separated from her parents and placed in a hospital, and to go through this therapy with the hot compresses being put on her body as a child. She says she remembered kids screaming in pain, and then she remembered when she realized that she was one of those kids that was going to be happening to. So she had a lot of disassociation from that experience. Fast forward, her parents became Jehovah Witnesses. Her mom started studying. Her dad was against it. Then her dad started studying, and her mom didn't stick with it. And then her parents got divorced. And her dad, who's also my dad, raised the kids as Jehovah Witnesses. And they actually, he separated them from their mother because she was a non-believer. And then he married my mom in the religion, who he met at church, at the Kingdom Hall. And she was 25 years younger than him. And I was born and I have a younger sister. So my mom and my dad's daughter from his first marriage were only 3 years age different, which is interesting. And I think that's part of the culture of that religion is, everybody has to get married because there's no sex outside of marriage. So my mom was available and willing to marry this older man who already had grown children. Growing up, she was like my second mom. My sister was like my second mom. My dad died when I was pretty young, and so it was my mom and my stepsister who raised me and my younger sister. And she ended up having to get a tracheotomy when she was 25 years old, because her scoliosis from the polio had severely suffocated her lung capacity, and she could barely breathe, and she needed to be on oxygen at night. And that just got worse as she got older, and the scoliosis got more severe, and she was on many medications, prednisone, all kinds of medications, 50 different medications, because she had medications that had side effects, and then she had medications for the side effects, and it was just a snowball for her. But she was able to stay alive much longer than they thought she would. She lived into her 50s. And I found out after she passed, at the end of her life, she didn't have a very easy life. She was in a lot of constant pain. She was not mobile at the end of her life. She had something called post-polio syndrome, which is how the muscles deteriorate for people who had polio when they were younger, as they age. And she was homebound. She was on a ventilator. And I was her home health care provider for many years. So I found out after she passed, there was a nurse from the hospital that she went to often. She spent months on end in hospitals. And the nurse had become her roommate. And after she passed, the nurse told me that she could have had the spine straightening surgery. And I knew that was an option for her, but she always talked about it like it was not a good idea. kind of like always just saying like she didn't want to have a rod in her back, and she had all kinds of reasons why she didn't think it was a good idea. But that nurse explained to me that it would have changed her life had she had that surgery when she was younger. It would have held her spine straight. She would have had a greater lung capacity. She wouldn't have been in as much pain. She would have been in pain from the rod in the back, but not the amount of pain that she was in from not having it. And that she had conversations with my sister Linda and understood that surgery was an option to her, but my dad wouldn't allow it, and she didn't choose it for herself because it required a blood transfusion. The doctors couldn't do it without a blood transfusion. And at that time, this new option of storing your own blood wasn't medically possible yet. So even if that was possible then, it still wouldn't have worked out for her. Anyways, and this was years and years ago, probably in the late 70s. So, or early 70s, actually. So we witnessed my sister have severe pain, be very disfigured, and not be able to live a full life. She was never able to live on her own. She was never able to have a career, or she never got married, or had her own children. And it affected all of us, right? And so she was a very courageous, spunky person. She didn't want anyone to have any pity for her. She didn't want to be called disabled. She wouldn't be in a wheelchair. She, challenged her limits whenever possible. I remember the story of her telling us that the doctors told her that after the trach was done, she wouldn't be able to jump in a swimming pool. And the first thing she did was she dived into the deep end of our neighbor's swimming pool when she got home. She went river rafting. She did a lot of things that no one thought would be possible for somebody with her condition, but also she wasn't able to do a lot of things that most normal people are able to do. And she suffered with pain and being disfigured. So it's a hardship for her, and it was hard for all of us to watch her endure that. And finding out after the fact that it wasn't all necessary, it's a hard thing to realize, And at the same time, I know that it was so important for her to have the beliefs that she had, and that the religion that we were raised in was part of her hope system. And so when I wrote about it in my blog, in the context of medical freedom and autonomy to make choices, I think that she had the right to make that choice for herself. And if that's the choice she made, we should respect it. Nobody should force you to get a blood transfusion. If that's not what you want to do, no one should force you to get a vaccine if that's not what you want to do. And I also happen to believe that no one should prevent you from getting an abortion if that's what you choose to do with your body. That's a whole other story. So in the spirit of medical freedom, I respect her choice not to have the surgery. And I am grateful that the organization has made this concession and is going to stop preventing people from having blood transfusions when it can be planned for. I do think we have a long way to go for the organization to open that up fully, that it would respect people's choices on that matter. And I don't actually believe that there's anything wrong with getting a blood transfusion. I think that old scripture about pouring the blood out was probably about women's menstrual cycles, to be honest, and the sacredness of the menstrual blood, and that it should be poured out into the earth. A lot of women are starting to do that again and using it for manifesting. So especially where I live here on Maui, it's very woo-woo. And it's a practice that a lot of women are doing. So having said all that, I think that the premise is even, one person's interpretation. And it's my understanding that the Jehovah's Witnesses were organized around the idea that we should all have the right to read the Bible for ourselves and make our own interpretation. It was a Bible study group that kind of spiraled out of control. And so in my reading of that scripture and in my understanding, of the context of it. I believe it's about menstrual blood. I don't think it's about anything that has to do with a surgery or a blood transfusion in the modern time. So that's all. I just wanted to share that with everyone. I want to say that I think it's good that this change is happening. It would have really been beneficial if my sister could have had that option back in the day. And, she didn't have that option for two reasons. She didn't have that option because it wasn't medically possible to store your own blood when she needed to have that surgery. And the religion didn't allow any blood transfusions when she needed to have that surgery. So at least we've made some steps forward. Medical science has advanced. Also, now the religion has come out with some new thought on the rules of engagement, which is great. And I think they have a little bit further to go. But we'll take it. We'll take every step in the right direction to make it better for those who are still within the religion and that belief system. Thanks, everyone. Hi, friends. It's Jen here. Thank you so much for subscribing to my channel. I really appreciate all of you. It's so great to have a sense of community here together, especially coming from a religion where disconnection was used as punishment and control. So to have people here who were raised in a similar way that maybe understand some of my background and the wiring that I got growing up as a child inside the Jehovah's Witness religion, it's really helpful. Please continue to leave comments. I love reading them. Please like and subscribe. Share this channel with anyone else you know who was also raised in a similar way that might benefit from hearing all of our stories. Reach out to me if you want to be interviewed. I would love to interview and share more stories. We can do it anonymously if you prefer. Also, I just want to let you know I'm on Instagram. I share some of my personal story there. I also have a Facebook page. It's titled Root Untethered. I'm on Patreon as Root Untethered. It's a $2 membership fee to join on the Patreon platform. And on that platform, you can get discounts to different things and be on the wait list for our retreat coming up. I also just joined Substack. So I've been putting posts out on Substack about different topics, and it's a great place to have conversations. And I've rebranded my website to jenleader.com, taking back my maiden name. And so you'll find some of the blogs that I reference here on the channel are available there for you to read. Thanks, everyone.